when we looked at it, it was like, oh, well, wait a minute here, I'm not so sure after all. So that was classifying versus coding. Now, let's see if we can find one that's real simple, and that's a code. All right, let's find gouty, or gout of the external ear, which we think is going to be code what? 27481. Well, I find 27481, and that's gouty toe 5 ear. Well, I feel pretty good about that one, though. It doesn't say external ear, but when it says of ear, that means both internal and external, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you feel better about that one than you did the gouty arthritis one? Mm-hmm. Why?
At least it had the ear there, and you can count it.
You were looking for specifics, and they weren't there, and you had to rely on your knowledge. Right. That's the difference in classifying and coding in its most elementary form. And that's how we code. Where did the code originally come from? We get our tentative code from the alphabetic. We validate it and make sure it's correct by looking in the tabular. And that's where we get the final code from, is the tabular. Questions?
I thought about that too. You can tell me terminology.
All right. Then the next thing I want to do with you all is just a couple of quick codes so you can kind of at least walk out of here and say, I don't know exactly everything we're doing, but I did code a couple of things. And the first one, I want you to look on page... Well, let's look on page 18 of your textbook. There are some diseases up there. It doesn't ask you to code them, but we're just going to code them to get a feel for how coding works. Let's look at chronic bronchitis first. One of the things that you're going to learn about how to code is you always look for the name of the diagnosis. So is it bronchitis or is it chronic we're going to be looking up? Bronchitis. So let's look up bronchitis. What type of bronchitis is it? Chronic. Do we know anything else about it? No. If we had the chart in front of us, might we have access to more information? Yes. So when we're coding from little blurbs, just little passages, we don't ever have all the information. So we have to make a decision based on the information we have. So we're dealing with bronchitis chronic. So I find bronchitis. Right under the word bronchitis, I see with. Now, that is out of alphabetic order. It's called a combining word because sometimes you'll have bronchitis with something else. So you've got to look through all the withs before you can just go to the next stage. So I don't have bronchitis with anything. I happen to have chronic bronchitis. So alphabetically, I come down to chronic. Well, I don't know whether it's asthmatic, catarrhal, chemical, or any of those things, do I? All I know is chronic bronchitis. So what is the code for chronic bronchitis? 491.9. I stop and I look up 491.9. In the tabular, it's in numerical order. 491.9. 491 tells us it's chronic bronchitis. 491.9 tells us that it's an unspecified chronic bronchitis. Is that right? Yeah, because we don't have any further specification, do we? Yes, ma'am.
When we went up under bronchitis, and then you come down a little bit, up there was the obstruction of airway, chronic, 491 point.
Where are you with the...
Right back at the very beginning of bronchitis.
Yeah.
And then you come down when you say wilt, emphysema, and then go down to influenza, but then the next one is that obstruction airway, then it's that chronic.
Ah, but did you meet all those requirements? Okay. And when you see the with, that means it's got to have those things with it for you to use those codes. So really, what was the first entry in alphabetic order? Acute, wasn't it? And then it goes, but those first ones are combining forms that we're going to look at before we look at anything else. All right, let's do one more. Let's do allergic bronchitis. So we go back to bronchitis. This time we see allergic. Oh, we've got an instruction there to see also asthma, but we have a 493.9 code. So see also means if this 493.9 doesn't do it for you, go to asthma. But we need to check out the 493.9 before we do that. And 493.9 tells us asthma unspecified. Oh, but ours was allergic. Read underneath that. It includes bronchitis allergic, but it also includes bronchitis asthmatic. So there are designations that have been made by the authors of this book, and we have to learn to live with them. Now, who wrote the book? Be more specific. Who wrote the book? What was their professional qualification? Coders didn't write it. Doctors wrote it. The World Health Organization brings in some of the foremost doctors in the world to sit down at a table and pour through this and figure out how they're going to classify diseases. We are the ones that have to interpret it. Now, your run-of-the-mill doctor on the street, your own personal physician, runs from this stuff. They know more no coding than you know how to do some kind of endoscopic procedure, okay? You're the expert in coding. They're the expert in the medical aspects. You're the translator. You're the person that takes what they say they did and turns it into a code. But remember that there are some physicians who really do like this stuff, and they're the kind of people that the World Health Organization brings in to start categorizing, and they're statisticians and things like that. All right, so that was coding in its most elementary. But you saw how you classified, too.